The key moment happened at the hotel checkout. The clerk handed me the receipt, and my stomach dropped. My ex had put the room under my full name, not his. I didn't notice until I walked outside and saw my husband's car parked across the street. Engine off, lights off, like he'd been there for hours. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He simply stepped out, held up his phone, and showed me the hotel's automated "thanks for your stay" email that had hit our shared inbox at 6:40 a.m. Then he asked me to open my own phone and read the last text I'd sent him the night before. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too much. But let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't just about one night. It's about how I convinced myself that I deserved something more, something exciting, and how that belief destroyed everything I actually had. My name is Ovidia Haldane, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a project coordinator at a children's arts nonprofit downtown, organizing events and managing donor relationships. It's rewarding work, but lately, it felt routine. My husband Damian is 36, a high school math teacher with the patience of a saint and the romantic instincts of a calculator. We've been married 8 years, and we have a 6-year-old daughter named Maya who draws pictures of our family, where everyone looks happy except lately. She's been making Damian smaller and smaller in each drawing. The trouble started 3 months ago when my ex-boyfriend Elias Brecht moved back to town. We dated for 2 years in college, and he was everything Damian wasn't. Spontaneous, flirty, always pushing boundaries. Now he's a marketing manager for some tech startup, and when he reached out through social media, I told myself it was just harmless catching up. "Ovidia, you look exactly the same," he said when we met for coffee at that trendy place downtown. "Marriage suits you," I laughed, stirring my latte. "Does it? Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing into routine." "That's the thing about settling down too young," Elias said, leaning forward. "You never get to explore who you really are." Those words stuck with me. That night, I looked at Damian grading papers at our kitchen table, his methodical red pen marking student mistakes, and I felt suffocated. When was the last time he'd looked at me like Elias had? When was the last time anyone made me feel alive? Over the next few weeks, Elias and I texted regularly. Nothing inappropriate at first, just old memories, shared jokes, complaints about work. But gradually, the conversations became more intimate. He'd send photos from his morning runs, and I'd respond with selfies from my lunch breaks. My coworker, Nate Fisher, noticed my improved mood. "Someone's glowing," Nate said one afternoon, perching on my desk. "New skincare routine?" "Just feeling more like myself lately," I replied, checking my phone for Elias's latest message. The night that changed everything started innocently enough. Elias texted me around 7 p.m. while I was making dinner. "Downtown for a client meeting tomorrow, staying at the Meridian Hotel. Want to grab drinks and catch up properly?" I stared at the message while stirring pasta sauce. Damian was helping Maya with homework in the living room, their voices a comfortable murmur. This was my life. Predictable. Safe. Boring. "Sounds fun," I typed back. "What time?" 8:30. Meet me in the lobby bar." I told Damian I was going out with my friend Marina from work. He barely looked up from Maya's math problems. "Have fun," he said absently. "I'll put Maya to bed." The lie came so easily that I almost believed it myself. I spent an hour getting ready, choosing a black dress I hadn't worn in months and makeup that made my eyes look mysterious in the bathroom mirror. I felt beautiful, desired, alive, in a way I'd forgotten was possible. The Meridian Hotel downtown was exactly the kind of place Damian would call unnecessarily expensive. The lobby bar was dimly lit with leather chairs and crystal chandeliers. Elias was waiting at a corner table, looking handsome in his navy blazer. "Wow," he said, standing to hug me. "Damian's a lucky man." "Is he?" I asked, settling into the chair across from him. Sometimes I wonder if he even notices me anymore. We ordered wine. expensive wine that I would never have ordered with Damian, and talked about everything except the obvious tension between us. Elias told me about his job, his travels, his apartment with the city view. I found myself complaining about my marriage in ways that felt disloyal, but also liberating. "You were always too vibrant for small-town life," Elias said, after our third glass. "Remember that night senior year when we drove to the coast just to watch sunrise?" "You said we should run away together," I laughed. "I thought you were crazy." "Maybe I was right, though. Maybe you were meant for bigger things." My phone buzzed. A text from Damian. "Hope you're having fun with Marina. Maya's asking for you." The guilt lasted about 30 seconds before Elias ordered another bottle. "He doesn't even wonder where you really are," Elias observed. "When we were together, I would have demanded details about every minute you were away from me." "That sounds possessive," I said, but my heart was racing. "That's passion, Ovidia. When did you last feel passionate about anything?" By 10 p.m., we were both drunk and the conversation had turned explicitly flirtatious. Elias kept touching my hand across the table, and I didn't pull away. Other hotel guests were giving us knowing looks. We looked like exactly what we were becoming. "I should go home," I said, but I made no move to leave. "Or," Elias said, "you could stay and remember what it feels like to be spontaneous." My phone buzzed again. "Damian, Maya's asleep, drive safe, love you." "Love you," 2 words that should have sent me straight to my car. Instead, I turned my phone face down and looked at Elias. "This is crazy," I whispered. "The best things usually are." When we got in the elevator, I told myself I was just going to see his room. When he kissed me against the elevator wall, I told myself it was just a kiss. When we stumbled into his room, I told myself I could still leave. I didn't leave. What happened next felt like someone else's life. Someone braver, more exciting, more deserving of adventure. Elias made me feel beautiful and wanted in ways I'd forgotten were possible. For 3 hours, I wasn't a suburban mom, or a non-profit worker, or someone whose husband forgot to compliment her new haircut. I was just Ovidia, 22 years old again, with her whole life ahead of her. My phone kept buzzing throughout the night. Damian's texts grew more frequent. 11:47 p.m. "Getting late. Everything okay?" 12:23 a.m. "Ovidia, please text back." 1:15 a.m. "Starting to worry. Call me when you get this." 2:08 a.m. "If you're too drunk to drive, I can pick you up." 2:45 a.m. "Please just let me know you're safe." Each message made my stomach clench with guilt, but Elias kept distracting me, kept telling me I deserved this, that I'd been neglected for too long. "Turn it off," he murmured against my neck. "This is our time." So I did. I turned off my phone and gave myself permission to pretend that my real life didn't exist. I woke up at 6 a.m. with a hangover and crushing guilt. Elias was still sleeping, one arm thrown across my waist possessively. In the harsh morning light, the room looked seedy, and the whole situation felt sordid. What had I done? I slipped out of bed and gathered my clothes, trying not to wake him. In the bathroom mirror, I looked exactly like what I was, a married woman who'd spent the night with another man. My makeup was smeared, my hair was tangled, and my dress was wrinkled beyond saving. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Damian and dozens of texts. The last one, sent at 4:30 a.m., simply said, "I'm going to assume you're safe until I hear otherwise." The coldness of that message terrified me more than anger would have. I typed back quickly, "So sorry. Marina had a crisis and I stayed over to help. Phone died. Coming home now." The response came immediately. "Okay." Just okay. Not "I was worried sick" or "Thank God you're safe." Just acknowledgement. I shook Elias awake. "I have to go." He smiled sleepily. "Stay for breakfast. Room service here is amazing." "I can't. I'm already in so much trouble." "You're a grown woman, Ovidia. You don't need permission to live your life." But I was already putting on my shoes, desperate to get home and somehow fix this. Elias got up and kissed me goodbye, still naked and confident. "This doesn't have to be a one-time thing," he said. "I'm in town for the rest of the week." I didn't answer, just grabbed my purse and headed for the door. In the hallway, I felt like everyone could see my shame. The elevator ride down felt endless. At the front desk, the clerk was processing checkouts for early business travelers. When my turn came, he smiled professionally. "Checking out of room 847? "Yes," I said, confused, "but it's not under my name." He checked his computer. "I show Ovidia Haldane. Your gentleman friend changed it last night. Said you were handling the bill." My blood ran cold. "Changed it to my name?" "Yes, ma'am. Here's your receipt." The paper in my hands felt like evidence of a crime. My full name, my credit card that I'd apparently given Elias when I was drunk, the room charges, everything. This wasn't some anonymous mistake I could pretend never happened. This was documented proof. I walked outside in a daze, and that's when I saw Damian's car. He was parked across the street, engine off, just sitting there like he'd been waiting all night. When he saw me, he got out slowly, deliberately, no rushing, no drama, just methodical movement that was somehow more terrifying than screaming would have been. He crossed the street and stopped in front of me, holding up his phone. "Funny thing about our shared email account," he said calmly. "Hotels send automatic confirmations. This one came in at 6:40 a.m. Thank you for your stay, Ms. Haldane." I opened my mouth to lie, to explain, to somehow make this not be happening, but no words came out. "Show me your phone," Damian said. "Show me the last text you sent me." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the device. The last message I'd sent was at 11:30 p.m. "Having fun with Marina, don't wait up," followed by a heart emoji that now looked obscene. "Damian, I can explain. Get in the car, Ovidia." The drive home was silent except for the sound of my heart hammering. Damian's face was expressionless, his hand steady on the wheel. This calm was worse than anger. Anger I could fight against, could deflect with tears and apologies. This cold control left me nowhere to hide. Maya was still asleep when we got home, thank God. I couldn't bear the thought of explaining to our 6-year-old why Mommy looked like she'd been hit by a truck and why Daddy's face had turned to stone. Damian went straight to his study and closed the door. I stood in our hallway, still holding the hotel receipt, trying to figure out how to fix this. Maybe if I explained that it was just a mistake, just too much wine and old feelings. Maybe if I promised it would never happen again. I knocked on his door. "Damian, can we talk? I need some time to think. Please, let me explain what happened. I know what happened, Ovidia. I need to figure out what happens next." That phrase, "what happens next," sent ice through my veins. I tried the doorknob, but he'd locked it. In 8 years of marriage, Damian had never locked a door against me. I spent the morning in a panic, cleaning the house obsessively and checking my phone every few minutes. Elias had texted twice. "Last night was amazing," and "When can I see you again?" I deleted both messages immediately. When Maya woke up, she immediately sensed something was wrong. "Why do you look sad, Mummy?" "I'm just tired, sweetheart. Daddy and I had a grown-up talk." "Are you getting divorced like Tommy's parents?" The question hit like a physical blow. "No, baby, we're just working through something." But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. Damian emerged from his study only to make Maya breakfast, speaking to our daughter normally, while treating me like I was invisible. After he left to drop Maya at school, I called in sick to work and spent the day spiraling. My friend Marina called around noon. "Girl, you look terrible in your Instagram story. What happened last night?" "What Instagram story?" "The one from the hotel bar. You and some guy. It's very intimate." My stomach dropped. I'd posted to Instagram while drunk, apparently. I quickly opened the app and saw it. A photo of Elias and me at the bar, his hand on mine, both of us looking flushed and happy. The caption read, "Sometimes you need to remember who you used to be." I deleted it immediately. But Marina's call meant people had already seen it. How many people? How many of our friends and family members? Ovidia, please tell me that's not what it looks like. It's complicated, Marina. Honey, no. It's really not complicated. You're married. After I hung up, I checked my other social media accounts. I'd apparently been very active while drunk, posting photos and stories that now looked like a public announcement of my affair. My mother had liked one of the posts. Damian's Aunt Lydia had viewed my Instagram story. The evidence was everywhere, and I'd created it myself. When Damian came home that afternoon, he was carrying a manila folder. "We need to talk," he said. We sat at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where Maya did her homework, where we'd planned our life together. Damian opened the folder and spread out printed screenshots of my social media posts, the hotel receipt, and printouts of text messages. "How did you get my texts?" I asked. "Family phone plan. Everything backs up to the shared cloud. I've been watching this develop for weeks, Ovidia." Weeks. He'd known about Elias before last night. He'd watched me lie and sneak around, and he'd said nothing. "Why didn't you stop me?" "Because I needed to know how far you'd go. I needed to know who you really are." He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a timeline, written in Damian's precise handwriting, documenting every interaction I'd had with Elias. Coffee dates I'd lied about, text conversations, social media interactions, everything. I'm a math teacher, Ovidia. I believe in data. And the data shows that my wife has been having an affair for 3 months, lying to my face daily, and last night she spent the night with another man, while I sat here wondering if she was dead in a ditch somewhere. Damian, I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Dozens of choices made over months, each one choosing him over our family. I started crying then, ugly sobs that came from somewhere deep and desperate. I don't know why I did it. I felt invisible, like you didn't see me anymore. So you decided to make sure everyone else could see you instead. He gathered up his papers and stood. I'm staying in the guest room. We'll figure out the logistics tomorrow. Logistics? For the divorce, Ovidia, for custody arrangements, for dividing our assets. The word divorce hit me like a slap. You can't be serious. It was one night. It was 3 months of lying. It was choosing to humiliate me publicly. It was abandoning your family for someone who doesn't even respect you enough to put the hotel room in his own name. That last part stung because it was true. Elias had stuck me with the bill and the evidence, protecting himself while leaving me exposed. Please, I whispered, we can fix this. No, Ovidia, you can't fix this. You can only live with the consequences. The next few days were a nightmare of whispers and sideways glances. At work, my colleagues treated me differently. Nate Fisher, who used to joke around with me daily, suddenly became formal and distant. People are talking, my supervisor Priya warned me during a closed-door meeting. Some of our major donors saw your social media posts. The Hendersons specifically asked if you were still representing the organization at public events. It's a private matter, I said weakly. Not when you make it public, Ovidia. Not when you're the face of a family-focused non-profit. I need you to take some time off while we figure out how to handle this. Being suspended from work felt like another piece of my life crumbling. I drove home in a daze, only to find my mother Rosa waiting in my driveway. We need to talk, she said, her face grave. Inside, she sat me down with the same stern expression she'd worn when I was caught sneaking out in high school. Your aunt called me. She saw your posts before you deleted them. Ovidia, what were you thinking? Mum, it's complicated. No, it's not. You're married. You have a child. You don't get to act like some college girl anymore. You don't understand. Damian and I have been having problems. So you work on them. You go to counseling. You don't run off with your ex-boyfriend and broadcast it to the world. My mother's disappointment hurt worse than Damian's anger. She'd always been proud of my marriage, bragging to her friends about her stable, successful daughter. Now I'd made her ashamed. "Where's Maya?" she asked. "School. Damian picks her up now." "Good. That child doesn't need to see you like this." After my mother left, I tried calling my friends for support. Marina was sympathetic but distant. Felix, who usually encouraged my wilder impulses, seemed uncomfortable. "Maybe you should have thought this through," he said. "Damian's a good guy. This is pretty brutal." Even my friends were abandoning me. The people who used to celebrate my confidence and independence suddenly thought I'd gone too far. That evening, Elias called. "I heard about the work situation. That's rough." "You heard? From who?" "It's a small town, babe. Word gets around." "Don't call me babe. This is a disaster." "Only if you let it be. You could leave him, you know. Start fresh. We could get a place together." The suggestion was absurd. Leave my daughter, leave my whole life for a man who'd stuck me with a hotel bill and disappeared the morning after. "I have to go," I said, hanging up. But Elias kept calling, kept texting, kept pushing. He seemed to think my crumbling marriage was an opportunity for us to rekindle our college romance. He didn't understand that I wasn't the same person I'd been at 22, that I had responsibilities and consequences he couldn't comprehend. Meanwhile, Damian was methodically preparing for war. I'd see him in his study late at night, organizing papers, making phone calls, typing on his laptop. When I tried to ask what he was doing, he'd simply say, "Protecting my interests." Maya started acting out at school. Her teacher called to report that she'd been drawing violent pictures, houses on fire, people crying, families separated by thick black lines. "She's processing something traumatic," the teacher explained. "Has there been any upheaval at home?" I lied, of course, said we were dealing with some stress but nothing major. But looking at Maya's drawings, I saw the truth I'd been avoiding. My selfish choices weren't just destroying my marriage, they were traumatizing my child. 3 weeks after the hotel incident, I thought maybe the worst was over. The initial shock had faded, people had moved on to newer gossip, and I was starting to believe I could rebuild my life. Damian was still cold and distant, but he hadn't filed for divorce yet. Maybe there was still hope. Then Nate Fisher called me on a Saturday morning. "Ovidia, you need to see the downtown paper, the weekend edition." "What about it?" "Just go get a copy, now." I drove to the corner store in my pajamas, my heart pounding. The weekend paper had a social section that covered local events and charity functions. Sometimes they featured photos from non-profit galas or community meetings. I found the paper and flipped to the social section. There, in full color, was a photo from our organization's donor mixer 2 months ago. I was standing with several major donors, smiling professionally in my black cocktail dress. The caption read, "Local arts advocate faces professional scrutiny following public affair." The article was devastating. It detailed my suspension from work, quoted anonymous sources about my social media posts, and even mentioned the hotel incident. Someone had talked to reporters. Someone had given them details that only a few people knew. My phone rang. It was Priya. "Ovidia, I'm sorry. The board met this morning. We're terminating your employment effective immediately." "You can't do that. This is my private life." "You made it public, and now it's affecting our funding." "The Henderson Foundation is pulling their grant. 3 other donors have expressed concerns. We can't afford to keep you on." I hung up and sat in my car outside the convenience store, staring at the newspaper. My career was over, my reputation was destroyed, and somewhere, someone was feeding information to reporters. When I got home, Damian was in the kitchen making coffee. He looked at the newspaper in my hands and nodded. "I saw it," he said calmly. "Did you talk to them? Did you give them this story?" "I didn't need to. You gave them the story yourself, Ovidia. I just made sure they had accurate information." "You destroyed my career." "You destroyed your career. I just documented it." That's when I finally understood what had been happening. Damian hadn't been preparing for divorce. He'd been building a case. Every screenshot, every receipt, every timeline entry was evidence. He'd been systematically destroying my credibility while maintaining his own reputation as the wronged husband. You calculated all of this, I said, the full scope of his revenge becoming clear. I'm a math teacher. I solve problems methodically. What about Maya? What about our family? Maya will be fine. She'll live with me primarily. Visit you on weekends once you get your life together. Our family ended the night you chose Elias over us. The custody arrangement he described was devastating. I'd go from being a full-time mother to a weekend visitor. Maya would grow up thinking of me as the parent who abandoned the family for a fling. This is cruel, Damian. I made a mistake, but this punishment doesn't fit the crime. Doesn't it? You humiliated me publicly. You lied to our daughter. You destroyed your own career with your choices. I'm not punishing you, Ovidia. I'm just making sure you face the natural consequences of your actions. That afternoon, a process server arrived at our door. The divorce papers were comprehensive and devastating. Damian was seeking full custody with supervised visitation for me. He was claiming adultery, abandonment of family responsibilities, and conduct detrimental to the child's welfare. Attached to the legal papers was a folder thick with evidence, screenshots of my social media posts, the hotel receipt, text message transcripts, photos of me with Elias at various locations around town, a timeline of my deception, even statements from witnesses who'd seen us together. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Since the first time you lied about where you were going. I knew you were capable of an affair, Ovidia. I just needed to document it properly. The coldness in his voice was terrifying. This wasn't the man I'd married, the gentle teacher who helped students with math problems and read bedtime stories to our daughter. This was someone I'd created through my betrayal, someone who'd learned to be ruthless. I'll fight this, I said. With what lawyer? With what money? Your job is gone, your reputation is destroyed, and I have 8 years of financial records showing that I've been the primary breadwinner and the more stable parent. He was right. I had no resources to fight him, no credibility to defend myself with, no support system to fall back on. I'd burned every bridge in pursuit of a fantasy that had lasted exactly one night. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. My lawyer, a public defender who took pity on my financial situation, advised me to accept Damian's terms rather than fight a battle I couldn't win. Your ex-husband has built an airtight case, he explained. Fighting this will only cost you money you don't have and potentially make the custody arrangement even worse. So I signed the papers. I agreed to weekend visitation with Maya. I accepted the division of assets that left me with almost nothing. I watched my marriage dissolve with the same methodical precision that Damian brought to everything else. Elias disappeared from my life as quickly as he'd reappeared. When I called him for support during the divorce, he was suddenly unavailable. His texts became infrequent and then stopped altogether. The man who'd convinced me to risk everything for passion vanished the moment things got complicated. I moved into a small apartment across town, the kind of place I would have looked down on during my married life. Maya visited me on Saturday afternoons, but she was distant and confused. She'd ask questions I couldn't answer. Why don't you live with us anymore? Why does Daddy look sad all the time? Did I do something wrong? Each question was a knife in my heart. My mother tried to maintain a relationship with me, but it was strained. She'd loved Damian like a son, and she couldn't understand how I'd thrown away everything good in my life for a man who'd abandoned me the moment things got difficult. I raised you better than this, she said during one of our awkward coffee meetings. I taught you that marriage was sacred, that family came first. I know, Mom, I made a terrible mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Ovidia. It was a choice, and now you have to live with the consequences. Everyone kept using that word, consequences, as if I hadn't already lost everything that mattered to me. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Damian at Maya's school play. He looked good, healthier, more relaxed than he'd been during our marriage. He was sitting with Lydia, his aunt, who'd always been lukewarm toward me. Now she looked at me with open contempt. After the play, I approached them hesitantly. "Maya was wonderful," I said. "She was," Damian agreed. "She's been taking acting classes. She's very talented." "Acting classes? I didn't know. There's a lot you don't know anymore." The casual cruelty of that statement took my breath away. I was missing pieces of my daughter's life, important milestones, and small daily moments that I'd never get back. Could we maybe have coffee sometime to talk about Maya?" "We can communicate through the custody app," Damian said. "That's what it's for." He walked away with Lydia and Maya, leaving me standing alone in the school auditorium. Other parents avoided eye contact, still remembering the scandal from months earlier. I was persona non grata in my own daughter's world. 1 year after the hotel incident, I was working as a receptionist at a dental office, the only job I could get with my tarnished reputation, when I got a call that changed everything. "Is this Ovidia Haldane?" The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "Yes." "This is Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. I'm working on a story about social media and its impact on modern marriages. I understand you were involved in a high-profile divorce case last year." My blood ran cold. "I have no comment." "We've been investigating how private matters become public scandals in the age of social media. Your case is particularly interesting because of how thoroughly documented everything was." I said I have no comment. "We've spoken with your ex-husband. He was very cooperative." I hung up, but the damage was done. That evening, Channel 7 ran a segment called "When Private Goes Public: The Cost of Social Media Infidelity." They used my case as an example, showing blurred screenshots of my social media posts and interviewing relationship experts about the dangers of oversharing. Damian appeared on camera, his face composed and articulate. "Social media gives people a false sense of privacy," he said. "They think they can control the narrative, but once something is online, it's permanent. My ex-wife documented her own affair and then seemed surprised when there were consequences." The reporter asked if he felt any sympathy for me. "I feel sorry for our daughter, who has to grow up knowing that her mother's choices were broadcast to the world. But I don't feel sorry for someone who chose public validation over private responsibility." Watching him on television, I realized that this had been his plan all along. Not just to divorce me, not just to win custody, but to make me a cautionary tale. To ensure that my humiliation was complete and permanent. The news segment went viral. Suddenly, I was receiving friend requests from strangers, interview requests from podcasters, and messages from people who wanted to tell me what they thought of my choices. I'd become a symbol of everything wrong with modern marriage, modern women, modern society. I changed my phone number and deleted all my social media accounts, but it was too late. The internet had made me immortal in the worst possible way. 2 years after my divorce, I thought I'd finally found some stability. I'd moved to a different town, gotten a job at a small marketing firm, and was slowly rebuilding my relationship with Maya during our weekend visits. The scandal had faded from public memory, and I was learning to live with the consequences of my choices. Then I received a certified letter that changed everything. It was from a law firm I didn't recognize, informing me that I was being sued for damages related to defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The plaintiff was listed as Damian Haldane. I called the number on the letterhead immediately. "This is about your social media posts from 3 years ago," the lawyer explained. "My client is seeking damages for the harm caused to his reputation and emotional well-being by your public documentation of your extramarital affair. But we're already divorced. He got everything he wanted. The divorce addressed the dissolution of your marriage. This addresses the separate matter of the harm you cause through your public behavior. The lawsuit was seeking $50,000 in damages, money I didn't have and couldn't possibly raise. Attached to the legal papers was a new folder of evidence, even more comprehensive than the divorce documents. Damian had been collecting data for 3 years, documenting every way my actions had affected his life. There were screenshots of comments on the news story, showing people criticizing him for not keeping his wife in line. There were statements from colleagues who'd made awkward jokes about his marriage. There were even therapy bills, showing that he'd sought counseling for the emotional trauma of my betrayal. "This is insane," I told my new lawyer, another public defender. "He's the one who gave the story to the news. He made it public." "Actually, according to these records, you made it public through your social media posts. He simply provided factual information when asked. The law is very clear about this. You can't claim privacy violations for information you voluntarily shared online." The lawsuit dragged on for months, draining what little savings I'd managed to accumulate. Damian's legal team was relentless, deposing my former friends, my former co-workers, even my mother. They painted a picture of a woman who'd destroyed her family for attention and then tried to blame everyone else for the consequences. The worst part was that they weren't wrong. During my deposition, Damian's lawyer asked me to read my own social media posts aloud. Sitting in that sterile conference room, reciting my drunken captions and flirtatious comments, I finally understood how I must have looked to everyone else. Not like a woman rediscovering herself, but like a selfish person destroying her family for validation. "Do you regret making these posts?" the lawyer asked. "Of course." "Do you regret having the affair?" "Yes." "Do you regret lying to your husband and daughter?" "Yes." "Then why should my client not be compensated for the harm your regrettable choices caused him?" I had no answer. The case was settled out of court for $30,000, money I'd be paying off for the rest of my life. But the financial cost was nothing compared to what happened next. The final blow came on a Tuesday morning when I arrived at work to find my boss waiting with a grim expression. "Ovidia, we need to talk." She led me to her office and closed the door. On her desk was a printout of an article from a legal blog titled "The Haldane Case: When Social Media Becomes Evidence." "A client sent this to me," she said. "They recognized your name." The article analyzed my lawsuit as a case study in how social media posts could be used as evidence in civil litigation. It praised Damian's legal strategy and used my situation as a warning to others about the permanent consequences of online behavior. "I can't have this kind of publicity associated with our firm," my boss continued. "We work with family businesses, churches, community organizations. Having someone on staff who's become a symbol of marital infidelity, it's not good for our image. But I've been a good employee. I've worked hard to rebuild my life." "I know you have, but this isn't about your work performance. It's about perception." So I lost another job, another chance at stability. At 35 years old, I was unemployable in my field, financially ruined, and estranged from most of my family and friends. That weekend, during my visit with Maya, now 9 years old and wise beyond her years, she asked me a question that broke my heart. "Mummy, why did you leave Daddy and me?" I'd always told her that sometimes grown-ups can't live together anymore, that it wasn't her fault, that we both loved her very much, but she was old enough now to want real answers. "I made some very bad choices, sweetheart. I hurt Daddy's feelings and I hurt our family. Because of that man." She knew about Elias. Of course she did. In the age of Google, children learn everything eventually. Yes, because of him, but mostly because I forgot what was really important. "Do you wish you could take it back?" Every single day. That night, after I dropped Maya back at Damian's house, the house that used to be our house, I sat in my car and finally understood the full scope of what I'd lost. Not just my marriage, not just my career, but my identity as a good person. I'd become someone I didn't recognize, someone who'd prioritized excitement over responsibility, validation over love. Damian had won completely. Not just the divorce, not just custody, not just the lawsuit, but the entire narrative. He was the sympathetic victim, the devoted father, the man who'd handled his wife's betrayal with dignity and strength. I was the cautionary tale, the woman who'd thrown away everything good in her life for one night of passion. The irony was that he'd achieved this victory using the same evidence I'd created myself. Every social media post, every lie, every selfish choice had been documented and preserved, turned into weapons against me. I'd built my own prison, brick by brick, post by post, lie by lie. 3 months later, I received one final piece of correspondence from Damian's lawyers. It was a cease and desist letter, warning me against any further contact with my ex-husband outside of court-mandated custody exchanges. Apparently, I'd violated the terms of our settlement by trying to friend him on a new social media account I'd created under a different name. I hadn't realized he would get a notification. I hadn't realized he was still monitoring my online activity. But of course he was. Damian was thorough in everything he did. The letter was professionally written and legally sound, but the message was clear. You are not welcome in my life. You are not welcome in my world. You exist only as Maya's mother, and only during the specific times the court has mandated. I was 36 years old, working at a call center, living in a studio apartment, and seeing my daughter 8 days a month. My ex-husband had remarried, a fellow teacher named Sarah, who was everything I wasn't, stable, private, content with a quiet life. Maya loved her. In her drawings now, Sarah was the same size as Damian, while I appeared as a tiny figure on the edge of the page. On the 5th anniversary of the hotel incident, I drove past the Meridian Hotel downtown. It had been renovated and renamed, but I recognized the building. I sat in the parking lot and tried to remember what I'd been thinking that night, what had seemed so important that I'd been willing to risk everything. I couldn't remember. The woman who'd walked into that hotel felt like a stranger to me now, someone whose motivations I couldn't understand. She'd believed she deserved excitement, deserved passion, deserved to feel alive. She'd thought her marriage was holding her back from some better version of herself. She'd been wrong about everything. The truth was that my marriage to Damian had been good. Not perfect, not exciting, but good, stable, safe. Built on respect and shared values and genuine love. I'd thrown it away for a fantasy that lasted exactly one night and destroyed the next 5 years of my life. Damian had been right about consequences. Every choice has them, and some consequences last forever. I'd chosen excitement over stability, validation over privacy, selfishness over responsibility. And now, I was living with the results of those choices every single day. As I sat in that parking lot, I realized that this was justice. Not revenge, not cruelty, but simple cause and effect. I'd broken something precious, and it couldn't be fixed. I'd hurt people I loved, and they'd protected themselves from further harm. I'd made my choices public, and the public had judged me accordingly. The story ended exactly where it began, with consequences. The receipt that had started my downfall was still in my jewelry box at home. A reminder of the night I'd chosen to document my